Welcome. Hi, I'm Dr. Alek Nikolic. I'm an aesthetic medical practitioner as well as the CEO and founder of SkinMiles. Today, we're going to be looking at quite a common skin concern, which is hyperpigmentation or excessive pigmentation, and also obviously what causes it and how to manage it and how the Bioderma Pigmentbio range fits into helping us treat and manage hyperpigmentation. Now, hyperpigmentation, very simply, is an excessive amount of dark marks that are visible on the skin surface. So it's a darker skin tone to your natural skin color. And they can come in different shapes and sizes. And typically, it's dependent on what causes the hyperpigmentation is what is the reason in how it will appear on the skin. Now, basically, excess sun exposure, sunburns, post-inflammatory reactions, as well as hormonal changes can all lead to these hyperpigmentation marks. And it very rarely, but it also can happen in areas where there's an excessive amount of friction, which is kind of based on an inflammatory response, like under the arm area or in the groin. That can also lead to pigmentary changes, which may need to be addressed or treated or managed. Now, generally, the most commonest type of hyperpigmentation is caused through sun exposure. And very simply, what happens, and that's a natural kind of skin reflex, is that when our skin is exposed to the sun, that there is an increased amount of melanin, which is the pigment within our skin that gets produced so as to protect the skin from those UV rays. But occasionally what can happen is there's an excessive or an increased amount of melanin that gets produced in a particular part or area of the skin, and that will appear like a dark mark. And one of the differentiating factors when we look at sun-induced versus other causes of pigmentation is that sun-induced hyperpigmentation tends to be very specific spots or areas on the face where those particular places on the skin have been overstimulated to produce melanin. In contrast, if we look at something like melasma, which is the hormonally induced type of hyperpigmentation, that tends to be quite confluent and almost in specific patterns. And so some people who suffer from melasma can develop hyperpigmentation across the upper lip, often referred to as a moustache of pregnancy, and other people may also develop pigmentation in wide patches around the forehead or even around the cheek. In this area, it's also known as a butterfly mask of pregnancy. And then finally, areas where there is friction, which is similar to post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, that tends to be quite localized at that particular area. So, for example, if we've occasionally as you know, you might have once burnt yourself on the stove trying to get out something that you're baking or cooking, and that small little burn can turn a dark color. And that's right specific at the area where that inflammatory response has taken place. Now, considering what I said earlier, that sun is the biggest cause of hyperpigmentation, it goes without saying that we need to use our SPF on a daily basis, and it should actually be applied several times daily, because SPF, once it's applied to the skin, has a duration of around 2 to 3 hours. So generally speaking, we should be reapplying through the day, and it's best to look at an SPF of 30 or higher, and preferably if it contains zinc and or titanium dioxide. So I've already mentioned the importance of SPF, but there are a few other ingredients that we should be looking at when we're trying to manage or treat our own hyperpigmentation or pigmentary disorders. And the first is I like to mention is niacinamide. Then we'll have a look at vitamin C. And then finally, we'll look at some gentle exfoliators like alpha hydroxy acid, your glycolic, your citric, your lactic acid, as well as your BHAs, such as salicylic acid. And I did say gentle exfoliators because some people's hyperpigmentation, which is caused by post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, And that classically is seen in the darker skin types, or more prevalent in the darker skin types. If we use a too aggressive peel or laser system, we can actually increase that inflammatory effect and therefore worsen the hyperpigmentation. Niacinamide, as I mentioned earlier, is a great ingredient to add in your topical regime because it helps to lighten pigmentation, it helps to protect the skin barrier, and it also helps to improve the moisture levels. And then finally, I also mentioned the importance of vitamin C. Vitamin C is an incredibly important antioxidant that should be applied in the mornings. And specifically what vitamin C does is it helps to naturally increase your own skin's SPF. So it helps to protect the skin from that excessive melanin production. But also importantly, it helps to lighten pigmentation that's already established. And then finally, the vitamin C will also block the enzyme called tyrosinase that is the main contributor of switching on those melanin cells, which then produce that increased amount of pigment within the cell. So by blocking that enzyme, it minimizes the ability of new pigment from being laid down. What makes Bioderma's Pigmentbio range so effective is the Reveal technology, which helps reduce melanin production and encourages cell turnover. It's gentle, science-backed, and safe, even for sensitive skin. One should look at specifically adding to your skincare regime the Pigmentbio HGO Micellar Water, the foaming cream, the Daily Care SPF 50, the Night Renewer, and the C Concentrate. Now, just a little bit more on the Pigmentbio HGO Water. It's a great starting point for cleansing and prepping the skin. The foaming cream combines exfoliation and cleansing with a gentle AHA action. That exfoliation is important because it helps to remove the dead skin cells and increase the penetration of your skincare regime. The Daily Care SPF 50, we already mentioned the importance of a daytime protection and also how it helps prevent future pigmentation. And then Night Renewer, because it works overnight to regenerate the skin cells. And then finally, the C Concentrate, an intensive 3-week booster with vitamin C. And I did mention earlier on in the video that friction in certain areas like under the arm and in the groin can cause hyperpigmentation. And Bioderma, specifically in their Photoderm range, have brought on sensitive skin. And that is a product that works specifically to reduce the hyperpigmentation in those particular friction-induced pigmentation areas. I mentioned earlier a Bioderma product from the Photoderm C Concentrate. And interestingly, a clinical study was done which showed a 65% improvement of hyperpigmentation marks in the darker skin types, mostly from skin type 4 all the way up to skin type 6. And so when we look at the effectiveness of the Bioderma range, I can definitely recommend that one should have a look at the entire Photoderm range and start adding it to help reduce and minimize the pigmentation. And what I do want to say, or just before I end off, is you must remember that a topical regime is about consistency to help with your hyperpigmentation. It's something that we need to apply on a daily basis and be disciplined, regular, and we cannot expect that those pigmentation changes to take place in a short space of time. Typically, with a topical regime, we're looking at a good 6 to 8 week period before we start noticing a reduction. And obviously, with ongoing use, one will find that the pigmentation lightens more in there as time goes by. So that is the end of our video. I hope you found that interesting, and please feel free to save this video and to share it with any of your other friends that may also be troubled with hyperpigmentation. Bye-bye.